The mutant purge. The infection begins. The world changed in a single night. It started in the crowded streets of New York, the quiet suburbs of Tokyo, the scorching deserts of Africa. People woke up with strange symptoms. Fevers that burned hotter than normal, pulses that beat too fast, eyes that glowed in the dark. At first, doctors thought it was just another virus, another pandemic that would spread and fade like the ones before. But this was different. A construction worker in Berlin lifted a steel beam 5 times his weight with ease, his muscles twisting unnaturally under his skin. A teenage girl in Mumbai ran so fast she blurred, vanishing from one end of the street and reappearing at the other, confused and terrified. A man in Los Angeles screamed when his arms sprouted thick, bone-like blades. The mutations had begun. Panic and quarantine. Governments reacted swiftly. The World Health Organization declared a global emergency, but no known pathogen could explain what was happening. Scientists ran tests, searching for a virus, a genetic disorder, a cause. But they found nothing. The DNA of the infected had simply changed. Fear took over. The first citywide quarantines were enforced in Hong Kong and Rio de Janeiro. Military trucks rolled into major capitals, setting up roadblocks. Airports shut down, train stations emptied. Anyone showing signs of mutation was dragged away, sent to secret facilities. The news channel showed images of frightened families torn apart, people screaming as soldiers in hazmat suits locked them away. And then the first attack happened. A man in Paris, his skin hardened into a dark, metallic sheen, resisted arrest. Bullets bounced off his body as he tore through the police, moving faster than human eyes could track. He was unstoppable, until a drone strike reduced him to ash. The world had its answer. The infected were dangerous. The cleansing order was issued. The first purge. Governments formed special task forces, the cleansers. Their mission was simple: eliminate the mutants before the world fell into chaos. The first few weeks were brutal. Cities burned as mutant outbreaks spread. Some infected fought back, refusing to be hunted. Others hid, terrified of what they had become. Not all mutants were aggressive. Many were still human at heart. A nurse in London used her new ability to heal the sick with a touch. A father in Canada discovered he could hear thoughts, reading the minds of his children before they even spoke. A child in Mexico wept as her hands glowed, burning everything she touched. But the cleansers didn't care. Orders were orders. The purges continued. Mutants were dragged from their homes, executed in the streets. Some fought back, unleashing terrifying powers. Others simply surrendered, hoping for mercy. There was none. The horrifying discovery. Then something changed. Deep in a research lab beneath Washington, scientists studying the captured mutant made a shocking discovery. The mutations weren't random. They weren't caused by evolution, radiation, or even a natural disease. Something, or someone, was rewriting human DNA. At the same time, astronomers detected a strange signal coming from deep space. It was unlike anything they had ever seen, an artificial pattern hidden in cosmic radiation, spreading across the planet. It wasn't a mutation. It was a message. The final warning. The realization came too late. Across the world, more mutants appeared, stronger than before. Some claimed they could hear voices in their heads, whispers in an unknown language. A scientist in Beijing decoded part of the transmission and sent a final message before disappearing. We are not evolving. We are being prepared. And then the signal changed. The sky flickered. The stars dimmed. The invasion had already begun. The night sky burned red as fire and destruction spread through the city. Screams echoed in the streets while monstrous figures roamed, their bodies twisting and mutating into horrific shapes. What were once ordinary men and women now had elongated limbs, sharp claws, and grotesque faces that barely resembled their former selves. The mutation had begun. Across the world, similar reports came in. Cities fell into chaos as the infected transformed into monstrous beings. Panic spread like wildfire. Fear took hold of the people. The United Earth government had no choice. A global emergency was declared. Every mutant, regardless of whether they showed aggression or not, was labeled a threat. The president of the United Earth government appeared on every screen, his face grave. We cannot risk the survival of humanity. We must act now. The purge begins immediately. Within hours, special military units known as the Cleansers were deployed. Their mission was clear: eliminate every mutant. Sergeant Lucas Reed adjusted his helmet, standing in the middle of a ruined street. Smoke rose from burning vehicles, and the distant sounds of gunfire signaled that the battle had already begun. His team, composed of elite soldiers, stood ready beside him. Each of them had been trained to follow orders without hesitation, but something about this mission didn't sit right with him. "Orders are clear, sir," said Private Carter, gripping his rifle. "Shoot on sight. No exceptions." Lucas nodded but remained silent. As they moved forward, they saw a group of mutants in the distance. Some were fully transformed, their bodies grotesque and inhuman. But others still had human eyes, human expressions. They looked terrified, confused. One of them, a woman, stepped forward. Her arms were covered in strange, dark veins, and her fingers had elongated slightly, but her face was untouched. "Please," she begged, tears streaming down her cheeks. "We're not all monsters." "Fire," barked Lieutenant Hale. Carter raised his rifle. So did the others. Lucas hesitated. His grip tightened around his weapon, his heart pounding. Was she really a threat? Did she deserve to die? The first shot rang out. The woman's body jerked backward, and she collapsed to the ground. The other mutants screamed and ran, but the soldiers continued firing. One by one, the mutants fell. Lucas lowered his rifle, his stomach twisting. The woman's lifeless eyes stared at him, her face still frozen in terror. This wasn't a battle. This was an execution. Across the city, chaos continued. The Cleansers moved from street to street, clearing out every mutant they found. Some fought back, their bodies mutating further, turning them into deadly creatures. Others simply ran, pleading for mercy. But mercy was no longer an option. Inside a destroyed hospital, a young scientist named Dr. Evelyn Carter hid in a darkened room, watching the slaughter from a broken window. She held a small recorder in her shaking hands, whispering into it. "This mutation, it's not what they think. Not all of them are dangerous. Some retain their human minds, their emotions. The government is making a mistake." She had spent years studying genetics, trying to understand the sudden outbreak of mutations. It wasn't a disease. It was something else, something deeper. But now, there was no time to study, no time to prove her theory. The government had already made its decision. A loud crash startled her. She turned to see a mutated man crawling into the room. His body was partially transformed, his arms too long, his skin darkened with strange patterns. But his eyes were filled with fear. "Help me," he whispered. Evelyn hesitated. She should run. She should call for the soldiers. But something told her not to. Carefully, she extended her hand. "I won't hurt you," she said softly. The man's breathing slowed. He nodded, his body trembling. Maybe, just maybe, not all mutants were monsters. Back on the streets, Lucas and his team continued their mission. But with every step, doubt crept into his mind. Was this truly necessary? He had seen men turn into beasts, yes, but he had also seen people like the woman they shot earlier, people who begged for their lives, who seemed no different from the ones holding the guns. A scream broke through his thoughts. Ahead, another group of mutants was being cornered. Among them, a child no older than 10 clung to his mother. The boy's skin had patches of discoloration, but his eyes were wide with fear, not aggression. Lucas took a step forward. "Wait," he said. Lieutenant Hale gave him a sharp look. "What did you say, Sergeant?" "They're not fighting back," Lucas said, pointing at the terrified boy. "Do we really have to kill them?" Hale stepped closer, his voice low. "Our job is to follow orders. Don't make me remind you of that." Lucas clenched his fists. The other soldiers raised their weapons. He had to decide: follow orders or follow his conscience. The night stretched on, the streets filled with the sounds of gunfire and screams. The purge had begun, and there was no turning back. But in the hearts of some soldiers, doubt had been planted. Were they really exterminating monsters, or were they killing something far more human than they realized? Hook. Are they truly monsters, or is there more to the mutation than meets the eye? Dr. Evelyn Carter sat in a dimly lit bunker, staring at the data on her screen. The world above was in chaos. The cleansers hunted mutants like animals, believing them to be a disease that needed to be wiped out. But Evelyn knew the truth. The mutation wasn't a disease. It was an activation, something hidden inside human DNA for centuries. And now, for some reason, it had awakened. She turned to her team of rebels, scientists, ex-soldiers, and even some mutants who had chosen to fight for the innocent. Among them stood Adrian, a young mutant with the ability to control magnetic fields. His power was unstable, but he had a good heart. "We can't keep running," Adrian said. "We need to fight back." Evelyn nodded. "We will. But first, we need to understand why this is happening. Why now?" Meanwhile, in a heavily guarded facility, the cleansers had made a discovery of their own. Their leader, General Marcus Kane, stood before a massive screen displaying ancient symbols and genetic sequences. "Are you telling me," Kane said slowly, "that this mutation is not random?" Dr. Langley, the cleanser's top scientist, swallowed nervously. "Yes, sir. Our research indicates that the mutant gene has been present in human DNA for thousands of years. Something has triggered it." Kane clenched his fists. "Who put it there? And why?" Langley hesitated. "We have a theory. Earth was seeded with this gene a long time ago. Someone, something, wanted this to happen." Kane's eyes darkened. "Then we are not just fighting mutants. We are fighting the ones who made them." Back in the Resistance hideout, Evelyn connected the final pieces of the puzzle. The mutation wasn't a mistake. It was part of human evolution. But the question remained: who had planted the seed? Just then, a distress signal came through the bunker's radio. A group of mutants was under attack by the cleansers in an abandoned city. Without hesitation, Evelyn and her team prepared for battle. Adrian clenched his fists. "No more hiding. It's time to show them what we really are." As the Resistance fighters moved out, the storm of war grew stronger. But now, they weren't just fighting for survival. They were fighting for the truth. Because if the mutation was natural, then humanity's true creators were still out there, watching. Dark clouds rolled across the ruined city, casting eerie shadows over what was once a thriving metropolis. The air smelled of smoke and burnt metal. Fires still burned in the distance, and the distant screams of survivors echoed through the empty streets. A group of cleansers stood atop a crumbling building, watching the chaos below. They had spent weeks hunting and eliminating mutants, believing them to be the enemy. But everything had changed when they intercepted the deep space transmission. Commander Ryan stood with his arms crossed, his expression grim as he replayed the message on his holo device. The alien voice was cold and emotionless. "Experiment Phase 1. Successful. Mutation activated. Observation in progress. Only the strongest will remain. Phase 2 to commence shortly." Ryan clenched his fists. "We were never at war with the mutants," he muttered. "This was never about survival. It was a test." Beside him, Dr. Evelyn Carter, the scientist who had been studying the mutation, shook her head in disbelief. "They did this to us. They changed our people, and we helped them by killing our own." A deep growl came from behind them. Ryan and Evelyn turned to see a tall mutant standing at the entrance of the rooftop. His skin was rough and covered in strange, hardened plates. His glowing yellow eyes studied them carefully. "You hear it too." The mutant spoke in a guttural voice. "The ones who did this to us, they are coming." Ryan raised his weapon instinctively, but Evelyn placed a hand on his arm. "Wait," she said urgently. "He's not attacking. He understands. He knows the truth." The mutant stepped forward. "We are not your enemy. We never were. We fight because we were made to. But now, we see the real threat. And you do too." Ryan lowered his weapon slowly. He had spent so long killing mutants, believing them to be monsters. But now, looking into this creature's eyes, he saw something different: pain, anger, and understanding. The radio on his belt crackled to life. "Commander, you need to see this. Look up." Ryan, Evelyn, and the mutant rushed to the edge of the building and looked toward the sky. Their breath caught in their throats. The stars were shifting. A massive structure, hidden in the blackness of space, was now visible as it moved closer to Earth. It was no ship. It was something bigger: a station, a fortress, a laboratory. No one knew. But one thing was certain: whoever had sent the transmission was watching. And they weren't finished. A loud roar filled the air as another mutant leaped onto the rooftop. This one had wings. Massive, leathery wings that stretched across his back. He landed with a heavy thud and looked at Ryan. "You want to live. You want to save your people. Then stop fighting us. Start fighting them." Ryan exhaled sharply. Everything he had been trained to do, everything he had believed, was crumbling around him. But one thing was clear: this was no longer just about humans versus mutants. It was about survival. For all of them. He turned to his soldiers. "We stop fighting each other. We find a way to fight back." Evelyn nodded. "If we can track the source of that signal, maybe we can find out what's coming next." The mutant leader, the one with the glowing eyes, stepped forward. "Then we do it together. Because if we don't, none of us will survive what comes next." As the shadow of the alien structure loomed over the Earth, humans and mutants stood side by side for the first time, no longer enemies but allies in a war far greater than any of them had imagined. The sky trembled as the first wave of alien ships pierced through the atmosphere, their massive forms casting eerie shadows over the ruined cities. Their smooth black surfaces reflected no light, absorbing everything around them. The ships did not attack, not yet. Instead, they scanned the surface, searching. But for what? No one knew. Dr. Carter stood in the remains of his underground lab, his hands shaking as he analyzed the latest readings. The mutations had entered their final stage. The survivors, once ordinary humans, had transformed into something new, something powerful. Their strength, speed, and intelligence had grown beyond anything imaginable. But there was a cost. Many of them had lost their human appearance, their bodies reshaped by the mutation. Some still had their minds intact, others had become something else entirely. The Cleansers, the brutal faction that had spent years hunting mutants, now faced an impossible decision. Their leader, Commander Briggs, stood on a ruined balcony overlooking the battlefield. He watched as a group of mutants tore apart an alien scouting drone with their bare hands. The creatures they once hunted might now be their only hope for survival. Could he trust them? Could they trust him? One of the mutants, a towering figure with glowing red eyes and elongated claws, stepped forward. His name was Darius, once a soldier, now something beyond human. His voice was deep, distorted by the mutation. "We are not your enemies anymore," Darius growled. "The real war begins now." Briggs clenched his jaw. The Cleansers had killed thousands of mutants. Could they really fight side by side? Before he could answer, the alien ships released beams of light across the land. The beams did not destroy. They scanned, choosing. People caught in the light screamed as their bodies dissolved into dust. vanishing into nothingness. The aliens were not here to conquer. They were here to purge. Dr. Carter's heart pounded as he realized the truth. The aliens were looking for something specific. The ones who were taken were normal humans. The mutants, however, remained untouched. "They're eliminating the weak," Carter whispered. "Only the strong will be allowed to survive." Darius turned to Briggs. "Still think we are your enemies?" Briggs exhaled sharply and tightened his grip on his rifle. "We fight together." A sudden explosion rocked the ground as alien foot soldiers emerged from the ships, their sleek armor reflecting the dim sunlight. Their weapons hummed with energy, firing pulses of blue plasma that melted steel and flesh alike. The first wave of resistance crumbled under their assault. But the mutants did not run. They charged. Darius led the attack, leaping through the air with unnatural speed. His claws ripped through alien armor as if it were paper. Other mutants followed, some with enhanced reflexes, others with monstrous strength. A woman with luminous blue veins raised her hand, and an electric charge surged through the battlefield, frying alien circuits. For the first time, the aliens hesitated. Dr. Carter had no time to celebrate. His work was not done. He had unlocked the final stage of the mutation, a process that could turn any human into something greater. But there was a risk. Once changed, there was no turning back. The mutation could save them, or destroy what was left of humanity. Briggs stormed into the lab, sweat dripping from his forehead. "Tell me you have a plan, Doctor." Carter hesitated before answering. "I can make us stronger. I can complete the mutation." Briggs narrowed his eyes. "You mean turn us into them?" Carter nodded. "It's the only way." The commander turned back toward the battle. The cleansers were being slaughtered. Plasma fire tore through their ranks. For every mutant that fell, 10 aliens died. But it wasn't enough. The enemy kept coming. Briggs made his decision. "Do it." Carter injected the serum into the first group of cleansers. The change was immediate. Their muscles expanded, their senses sharpened, their fear melted away. Within minutes, they joined the fight, not as humans, not as mutants, but as something new. The aliens, once unstoppable, now faced a force they had never encountered before. Humans who refused to be weak, who embraced what they had once feared. And for the first time in history, the invaders knew what it meant to be afraid. Earth's last hope lies in embracing what it once feared. The battle had reached its final stage. The sky above Earth burned with alien ships, their dark, insect-like forms blotting out the sun. The invaders had one last goal: to harvest the strongest humans and mutate them into weapons. But humanity was no longer weak. Mutants and unmutated humans fought side by side, their unity forming an unbreakable wall against the enemy. Once hunted as abominations, the mutants now stood as Earth's last defense. General Evelyn Carter, leader of the human resistance, stood on a crumbling skyscraper, watching the chaos below. His radio crackled with desperate voices. "They're pushing toward the bunker. We need reinforcements." Ethan turned to his second-in-command, Lieutenant Sarah Malik, a mutant with glowing red veins under her skin. "We hold the line, no matter what. If they break through, we lose everything." Sarah nodded, her sharp claws flexing. "Then we make sure they don't." Across the battlefield, the cleansers, the elite human warriors who once swore to destroy all mutants, made their choice. They injected themselves with the mutation. Their bodies twisted, transformed, their screams filling the air. Within moments, they were faster, stronger, and deadlier. Commander Jace Holloway, leader of the cleansers, clenched his fists. His body pulsed with unnatural energy. He had spent his life hunting mutants, but now he had become one. "Kill the aliens first," he growled to his soldiers. "We deal with what we've become later." The battle raged. The ground shook as mutant and human forces clashed with the alien horde. Ethan charged into the fray, his rifle spitting fire. A massive alien beast lunged at him, its claws slicing the air. Before it could strike, Sarah leaped onto its back, her claws ripping through its armored hide. It let out a piercing shriek before collapsing. Jace led his newly mutated cleansers into the heart of the enemy. They moved like demons, their bodies bending and stretching in unnatural ways. One soldier grabbed an alien and crushed its skull with his bare hands. Another tore through a group of invaders with razor-sharp tendrils growing from his arms. For the first time, the enemy fell back. Ethan watched the tide turn, but his heart was heavy. The mutation was changing them, faster than expected. Sarah's eyes glowed brighter. Jace's skin darkened into something inhuman. The cleansers' bodies continued to shift, their voices growing distorted. Then, the first sign of the final mutation appeared. A mutated soldier suddenly screamed, clutching his head. His body convulsed, then burst into black smoke. Where he once stood, a monstrous figure emerged. No longer human, no longer anything familiar. It roared, then attacked the nearest soldier. Sarah staggered, gripping Ethan's arm. "It's happening. We're losing ourselves." Jace snarled, forcing himself to stay in control. "Keep fighting. We can end this before it's too late." The remaining humans watched in horror as more mutated warriors collapsed, transforming into something alien. The battlefield became a war on two fronts, the fight against the invaders and the battle against their own mutated kind. Ethan made a decision. He grabbed his radio. "All forces, fall back to the bunker. We regroup and strike the mothership. That's the only way to end this." Sarah hesitated. "If we do that, we leave the mutants behind." Ethan's voice was firm. "If we don't, there will be no one left to save." Jace turned to his remaining cleansers. "We hold them here. We'll give you time." Ethan met his gaze. "You'll all turn. You know that." Jace smirked, his teeth sharper than before. "We were dead the moment we injected ourselves. At least this way, we die as warriors. Now go." Ethan clenched his jaw, then nodded. "Good luck, soldier." As the human forces retreated, Jace and the remaining cleansers charged at the enemy, their roars echoing through the battlefield. One by one, they fell, first to the aliens, then to their own transformations. The last thing Jace saw before losing himself was the human ships rising toward the alien mothership. Inside the ship, Ethan, Sarah, and their team fought through corridors filled with alien warriors. The air was thick with smoke and blood. Their only mission: destroy the control core. Sarah clutched her head as her transformation accelerated. "Ethan, I don't think I can hold on much longer." Ethan gripped her shoulder. "Just a little more. We end this now." They reached the core chamber. A pulsating mass of energy floated before them. The heart of the invasion. Ethan pulled out a detonator. This should do it. Before he could activate it, an alien warlord emerged, a towering figure covered in black armor. Its voice rumbled like thunder. "Your kind is already lost. Even if you kill us, what will you be? You are no longer human." Ethan narrowed his eyes. "Maybe. But we are still us. And that's enough." Sarah, her body almost fully mutated, lunged at the warlord. It was a battle of monsters. Claws against claws. Teeth against steel. She fought like an animal, her last human thoughts fading. But before she lost herself completely, she did the only thing she could. She grabbed the warlord and hurled them both into the core. The explosion tore through the ship. Ethan barely managed to escape as fire engulfed everything. The alien forces collapsed. Their ships crashed. The invasion was over. But Earth was forever changed. Ethan stood on the battlefield, watching the ruins of the alien mothership. The remaining mutants, those who had survived the final mutation, wandered the land like lost souls. No longer human, no longer anything else. He thought of Sarah, of Jace, of all those who had given everything to win this war. Humanity had survived. But at what cost? The war was over. The sky, once filled with fire and destruction, now stretched endlessly, clear but eerily silent. Cities lay in ruins, their buildings reduced to skeletons of steel and ash. The bodies of the fallen, both human and alien, littered the battlefield, a grim reminder of the war that had nearly ended humanity. But humanity had survived, changed, transformed. Half of Earth's population had mutated. Their bodies had adapted to the alien technology, their DNA rewritten by the strange energy unleashed during the final battle. Some had gained unnatural strength. Others could heal from wounds that should have been fatal. A few had abilities beyond human understanding. Glowing eyes, telepathic whispers, the power to move objects with their minds. The world stood at a crossroads. The survivors gathered in the ruins of New York, where the last battle had taken place. Leaders, scientists, soldiers, and civilians, those who still considered themselves fully human and those who had become something new, came together to decide the future. General Harris, a veteran of the war, stood before the crowd. His face was scared, his uniform torn, but his voice was steady. "We fought for our survival, and we won. But at what cost?" He looked at the post-humans, some standing among the crowd, their glowing eyes watching him silently. "We must decide. Do we rebuild our world as it was, or do we embrace this evolution?" A murmur spread through the crowd. Dr. Evelyn Carter, a leading scientist, stepped forward. "This transformation is not a disease. It is a gift. We have become stronger, faster, more advanced. We can use these abilities to build a better world. But at what cost?" Another voice argued. "Are we even human anymore?" Silence fell over the crowd. Then, a deep hum echoed across the sky. A massive alien structure, once a warship, now lifeless, hovered in the distance. And then the final message came. A holographic figure appeared before them. One of the alien commanders, its face unreadable, its voice calm. "You have passed the test," it said. "We will return." The crowd froze. A test. Had this war been an experiment? Had the aliens planned this outcome? Some shouted in anger. Others stood in shock. A few, those who had changed, only nodded as if they had already known. In the middle of the ruins, a lone soldier, Jake Nolan, stared at his reflection in a broken piece of glass. His eyes, once brown, now glowed with a strange blue light. He clenched his fist, feeling the energy coursing through his veins. He was no longer just human. None of them were. The war was over. The next evolution had begun.